I married you because I thought you were a rich heiress, but I don't need a woman who makes only $7 an hour. Get out, you worthless wife. I'm fed up with a woman like you playing mom. I don't need a low-income old lady. Please, leave. They said, smirking at me as they spoke. Without giving me a chance to argue, my belongings had already been packed into cardboard boxes and trash bags, placed next to them. I had so much I wanted to say, but my spirit was too shattered to retort. So, you want to divorce me and have me leave this house, right? That's right. I did like that you were understanding. Once you're gone, Dad can finally be happy. Okay, I understand. But you too will regret this. I wasn't kind enough to stay silent after being treated like this. Surely, these two will regret kicking me out of this house. My name is Susan, a 50-year-old employee. I've been working at my father's company while raising my daughter Gina and taking care of the household for over a decade. I married my husband Harry 10 years ago. Our meeting was through work. Harry was a sales representative from a client company, always easy to talk to. He wasn't my type physically, but I, who rarely gets along with people, was secretly attracted to the always cheerful and smiling Harry. Then, Harry asked me out, and we started dating. Initially, I was afraid that we were not a good match, but Harry said, "Your shy nature and homeliness are wonderful." Our relationship was going well, and I enjoyed our time together. But one day, Harry dropped a bombshell. Actually, I have a daughter who's about to turn 10. This came out after 6 months of dating, right when Harry proposed. What? The news of Harry having a child was completely unexpected. I knew he was divorced, but I had no idea about the child. I was thrilled about the proposal, but honestly, I was also bewildered. Yet, Harry, who took me to delicious restaurants and beautiful night views, who spoke positive words to the negative me, made me think life with him would be fun. With that thought, I came to think I wanted to marry him. Stay away from a divorced man with a child. You're bound to suffer, my strict father warned. But Harry promised, "I will make you happy," and believing we could overcome any difficulty, I married him against my parents' wishes. I wish I could tell my past self to listen to my parents. Otherwise, I would end up in hell. Concerning our marriage, I worried whether I could get along with Harry's daughter Gina or become a good mother, having never raised a child. The day I first met Gina. "Nice to meet you, I'm Susan." "Nice to meet you. I'm Gina. Come in quickly," Gina said, greeting me with a smile and forcibly pulling me into the living room. "You're the daughter of a president, right? And a career woman too? Wow, that's so cool." Her pure, sparkling eyes touched my heart. She seemed like a really good kid. That day, I had prepared a homemade meal. I put extra effort into it, cooking a variety of dishes that I thought the kids would love. Then Gina, with her mouth full of food, kept saying how delicious it was, over and over again. I remember feeling incredibly happy. "Susan, your cooking is amazing. It's completely different from Dad's. Being able to eat like this every day would be the best." She said that and, surprisingly, seemed to have easily accepted the fact that her father was remarrying. "What do you mean, Gina? Isn't the food I make good too?" "Well, it's always the same dishes, and they're kinda bland. Susan's cooking is way better." Now, that's sad. I'm gonna cry. The two of them bantered like this, playfully jostling each other. It made me feel they were a close-knit family. And that brought me to the topic of our family finances. My husband is an average employee at a small to medium-sized company. On the other hand, I, despite being the daughter of a company president and having worked long years at my father's company with a respectable position, earn a fairly good income. Therefore, our family finances are primarily supported by my salary. Since we had agreed that my husband would take a more active role in household chores and childcare, I never really had any complaints, believing that the one who can earn more should do so, which became our family's approach. That's why, for Gina and Harry's sake, I started by upgrading all the furniture and appliances I had been using alone to family-friendly ones, aiming to create an environment where Gina could live more comfortably. The same went for our living situation. When I was single, I lived in a large apartment owned by my father's company, which was too big for just one person. So, it was decided that the two of them would move into my apartment, and our new life together as three started. The first time Gina came to my apartment, she was running around everywhere, exclaiming, "It's so big! Amazing!" Seeing her like that, I vowed to myself to work hard at parenting and at my job so that she could grow up to be a fine adult. Living together as three, there was no stress, and it was peaceful and enjoyable. Blood relation didn't matter. We three were becoming a real family, filled with hope for the life ahead. However, reality is not always so sweet. When Gina entered middle school, her attitude towards me started to change. She joined the badminton club, which was serious about practice, so she was busy with school during the day and club activities from evening until night, and gradually began to spend less time at home. On days when there was no club activity, she would come home from school, toss her bag onto the sofa, and just play with her phone. That's when the distance between Gina and me began to grow. Even when I spoke to her, she wouldn't so much as look my way, let alone nod. When I discussed Gina's attitude with my husband, he said, "She's just in her rebellious phase because she's in middle school, don't worry about it," so I thought it would settle down after a while. But no matter how long I waited, there was no sign of change. I kept trying to engage Gina in conversation, but the response was lukewarm, and sometimes she would let out a deep sigh and say, "What? Don't talk to me," completely rejecting me. Even when the three of us were watching TV in the living room, Gina would only talk to Harry. If I said something, she acted as if she hadn't heard. Yet when she needed something, like, "Hey, can you wash this for tomorrow's club activity?" she would talk to me. Other than those times, I might as well have been invisible. Nevertheless, to prevent any further distance between us, I tried to fulfill Gina's requests as much as possible. But I also work, and not at a company where weekends are guaranteed off, but with shift work, and I'm often busy with work even on weekends. Sometimes I have to work from home on weekends. My job is that demanding. I don't hate my job, and I'm grateful that I can do it, but the busier I get, the more inevitable it becomes that I can't always meet Gina's demands. Often, when I return from work and start to prepare dinner, I'm faced with requests like, "I want a cake from the bakery in front of the station," or "I don't like this side dish, make a meatloaf instead." Many times, I simply have no choice but to refuse. Every time I refuse, Gina makes a blatant face of disgust and says, "TSK. Useless, if you were a mom, you'd do at least that much," and then goes back to her room. Lately, it seems like her catchphrase is, "A mom would do this for me, right?" I've repeated this many times, but although legally I am Gina's mother, we are not related by blood. I've tried my best to be recognized by Gina, but I still feel that she doesn't accept me as her mother. Every time she says those words, I blame myself for not being able to meet her needs and fall into self-loathing. This applies to my husband too. When Harry first met me, he was incredibly kind and showed his charming smile a lot. But it seems he follows the "no need to feed a fish once you've caught it" mindset because a year into our marriage, his attitude towards me became indifferent. There was no atmosphere of a close-knit couple, more like just roommates. So, trying to get a little attention, I suggested to my husband, "How about we go on a date, just the two of us, after such a long time?" But he rejected it, saying, "Huh? A date? We have a daughter named Gina, so don't say such creepy things." What would Gina say? I wanted to retort, "We had a child when we first met, Harry, and we still went on dates, didn't we?" But saying that would just make him angry again. What bothered me the most was the reckless spending of my husband and Gina. I work at my father's company and hold a position there, so my salary is pretty good. Yet, due to their squandering, there's hardly any savings left. I've warned them both numerous times, but they never seemed inclined to change. On the contrary, they started saying things like, "You're really stingy. She's such a terrible woman." Despite all this, I wasn't living the blissful married life I could boast about. But since I got married for the first time after turning 40, I tried to accept that maybe this is what marriage is like. Time flew by quickly, and before I knew it, I was 50 and Gina turned 20. It should be a happy occasion. But I couldn't feel genuinely happy. The memory of the first time I met this child came back to me, thinking that I would do my best to raise her so that she would become a fine adult. On the day of her 20th birthday, I took a day off from work, prepared a beautiful just as she had asked, and made an appointment at the hairdressing salon. On the day of the event, I drove my daughter around early in the morning, and I was fully prepared for the birthday party. When her hair and makeup were done, seeing Gina in her splendid attire brought a natural smile to my face. "You look truly stunning. You've become such a beautiful woman. Wow, Gina, you look great. Truly my daughter. The most beautiful one there." My daughter smiled only at her father, saying, "Thanks, Dad." My words were completely ignored. Harry is dressed in a suit and preparing to head to the birthday party venue. I also wore nicer clothes than usual and was planning to head to the birthday party venue with Gina and Harry. But then, why would you even think of coming? You absolutely must not come to the ceremony, she dismissed me harshly. My daughter, calling me an old hag and spewing insults. But I thought, since you are dressed so beautifully, I would like to go together. Trying not to mind the harsh words, I attempted to smile and say this, but it seemed to have the opposite effect. Stop it. Don't pretend to be a real mother. I don't want you calling me your daughter. Just stay away. I don't want my friends to think my mom is such a plain woman. She shooed me away with a dismissive gesture. Can this be considered the behavior of a fine adult? A fake mother, huh? Maybe I made a mistake in the way I raised her. I let out a heavy sigh. In the end, my husband and Gina left without me. Reluctantly, I decided to spend the day quietly at home. But suddenly finding myself with nothing to do, I ended up going to work. I realized just how much of a workaholic I am. After finishing work early and returning home, I found my husband sitting on the sofa, frowning and crossing his arms, radiating a serious aura. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Why didn't you tell me?" "What are you talking about?" "Your father's company is on the brink of bankruptcy. They're scaling back their overseas business, aren't they?" It seems my husband heard some rumors somewhere. We haven't had dealings with his company for some time, so he wouldn't know the details. A crisis of bankruptcy? That seems a bit off. But I do know they're scaling back their operations in Asia. I was going to discuss it with you later. You were going to talk? What about our salaries? What's going to happen? My husband seems more concerned about my salary than my company. The salary might drop until things settle down. You must be joking. Gina is going to college soon, right? How are we supposed to afford her tuition? I've got the tuition covered. Plus, I try to explain the situation with my father's company and why my salary has been reduced, but my husband won't listen. Enough. You can't make money, can't get along with our daughter, you really are a failure as a mother. His words, a failure as a mother, pierce my heart. It's true that my salary has decreased, and I can't say that my relationship with my daughter is good. But being denied so clearly, I am taken aback. I need to rethink our future together. With those words, he bangs the door loudly on purpose and leaves the house. I want to rethink my future with Harry as well. I was planning to talk to him after Gina's birthday party, but I don't know why everything seems to be going wrong. And the next day, I ended up working overtime because it was busier than usual, then went home. Harry used to say when we first got married, the one who earns more should just earn, and the one who comes home first should cook, but that promise has been broken long ago. I figured there probably wouldn't be any dinner at home, so I decided to just buy some fast food. When I got home, I saw my husband and Gina smirking. Usually, they would either be watching TV or staying in their rooms when I come back, so something was clearly off. It was as if they were waiting for me to come home. But it didn't look welcoming. I had a bad feeling about this. My bad premonitions are always right. Today was no exception. You're finally back. You were late. Yeah, really late. We were tired of waiting. Eh? Well, I've been busier lately because of new assignments. But what's up with you two? Here, take this. He tosses a large bag towards me with a thud. Open it up. This is. Opening the bag, of course, there's no present inside. Instead, it's filled with my clothes and cosmetics. What on earth? I'm utterly confused and can't catch up with my thoughts. Then, my daughter says, "Come here," and leads me to a back room in the living area. She opens the door, and inside, all my belongings are packed in cardboard boxes and trash bags. Geez, Mom, you have too much stuff. It was tough to pack everything. I took a day off work to help pack all this. I'm really tired. Good job, Dad. Watching them laugh together, I finally understand their intentions. Are you telling me to leave? That's right. Gina and I have been discussing this for a while. Yeah, Mom. Your dad's company is really going downhill, right? Your salary has been cut too, right? There's no point in hiding it. I've heard everything from Dad. But that's. Your role in this house is really over. That's right. We don't need someone who can't make money. Without giving me a chance to speak, my daughter and husband seem determined to blame me. I can't find the right moment to interject as they speak rapidly, like a machine gun, and I can only listen, looking down. As I stay silent, they seem to forget I'm there and continue to spill their true feelings. They say you were a CEO's daughter, so I married you, thinking I'd hit the jackpot, but what a mistake that was. It's true, isn't it? I thought I'd become one of those rich kids, living in a fancy apartment, so I accepted having a gloomy-faced mom. But then I get scolded for overspending. And look at her? How can I tell my friends this is my mom? Both of you, what are you saying? I managed to interject with a feeble voice into their conversation. However, this only fueled their fire further. I can say it now, but I married you for the childcare help and the money. What? I doubted my own ears. My ex-wife was no good at raising kids at all. Couldn't earn as a stay-at-home mom and got postpartum depression after she gave birth, so my first marriage was a failure. I took Gina because she mattered to me, but as a mere office worker in a small company, I knew I couldn't raise a daughter on my own. So, I looked for a woman who seemed to have some money, one who wouldn't betray me, a plain woman. And there you were. No, you're kidding. I went against my parents' wishes to marry you. You really are an idiot. Just a little I love you, and you blush all over. It was so easy to make you fall for me. That's awful. Who's the awful one here? It's unbearable how the company went under. I've seen your recent pay slips. What, around $7 an hour? It's the worst. Gina's grown up now, and I don't need a low-earning wife anymore. Get out of our house. My hourly wage is $7? What is he talking about? I couldn't understand it all. As I stood there in silence, my daughter followed her father, saying, "I've had it with someone like you pretending to be a mother. We don't need a low-income grandma. Please, just leave." Their heartless words shattered my heart. So, they had been thinking this all along. I had been oblivious to it all. There was so much I wanted to say, but I no longer had the energy. So you want me to divorce you and leave this house, is that it? That's right. I didn't dislike your understanding side. It's really sad for Dad. Hurt and deceived by this woman. Now Dad can finally be happy. Why did my daughter hate me so much? I couldn't recall doing anything to deserve such treatment from my husband or my daughter. But she looked at me with sheer loathing, glaring fiercely. Seeing this, my husband smirked with satisfaction. I couldn't stay silent after being treated this way. I'm not that kind of pushover. One day, they would regret making me leave this house. I immediately started preparing to leave. Oh? Decided to leave, have you? Finally realized you're just baggage in this house. It's been a long time coming. He began moving my belongings to the entrance while saying this. Watching him, my daughter strangely sympathized, carrying the luggage out. Dad is really too kind. We'll send the remaining stuff by COD mail later. But get your things out of our house within a week, or we'll dispose of everything, just so you know. Suddenly being told to leave and then setting a deadline for moving out, and on top of that, threatening to dispose of everything if I don't meet the deadline? How unreasonable can he be? Understood. And just one last thing, you're definitely going to regret this. Be prepared. I said that with the loudest voice I've ever used towards him. What? I won't regret anything. He laughed, but ignoring his words, I left the house. That day, I moved into a company-owned apartment. I decided to live there until I could find a new place. I could have had the luggage sent, but I didn't want them to know my new address, so I hired a moving company myself when my daughter and husband were out. We were both working, so we split our savings in half. He had a habit of wasting money, so he never saved anything. Naturally, this meant my savings ended up in his hands, but those were the rules. In the end, I handed over a large sum of money, equivalent to $100,000. Well, I hope he uses it for Gina's college education. That was my intention anyway. And so, we were divorced. Until the divorce, I was emotionally torn apart, but once it was finalized, I surprisingly found myself feeling lighter and happier. To my surprise, I felt completely relieved. It must have been a sign of how distorted our marriage had been. About 2 months after the divorce was finalized, my ex-husband called me. Honestly, I hesitated to answer, but I had a pretty good idea what it was about, so I decided to entertain myself and hear him out, thinking his current predicament might be amusing. Hey! What's the meaning of this? The first words from my ex showed he was in quite a panic. What do you mean? Well, I mostly knew what had happened, but I pretended not to know to let him explain. I've been told to leave this house from tomorrow. Why? It's our apartment, isn't it? Of course, it's because the apartment is owned by my company. Ex-husbands who are now strangers have no reason to live there. That should be obvious after a little thought. But suddenly being told that, I have nowhere else to go. Ask your father to let me and Gina stay here like before. What are you talking about? 2 months ago, I was suddenly kicked out with nowhere to go either. Who was it that didn't care at all then? I'm sorry about that. I apologize. But, come on, can't you do something? No matter what you say, it's impossible. Is that all? I'm hanging up. There's no way a cheap apology could make me forgive what happened that day. Even after the divorce, this man still underestimates me. As I'm about to hang up, he says, "Wait, please wait," refusing to let me end the call. What? Is there anything else? There's something I don't understand. Recently, I found out that a very tall apartment building is going to be constructed near our place. The location is great, and the flyer showed that the amenities and space were incredible. When I looked it up, it turned out to be owned by your company. What's this about? Your company was supposed to be in a financial crisis, right? There's no way you could afford to build such an amazing apartment. Oh, that matter. My company started a new business 2 years ago. It's doing quite well, and there was never a risk of bankruptcy in the first place. Now, it has grown into a corporation with an annual revenue of $30 million. So, buying that apartment was an easy task. What? But I thought the company you had in Asia went under. And your salary had decreased, hadn't it? The company in Asia hasn't disappeared. It's smaller, but it's still there. We're focusing more on other areas now because they're more lucrative. The decrease in my salary was only during the transition period. Our company operates on an incentive system. My father made sure other employees' salaries didn't decrease. As for me, I'm family, so I told them it was okay to cut my salary temporarily. The base salary alone was more than enough, and I had a big project coming up anyway. Why didn't you explain any of this to me? I tried to tell you. But you never gave me the chance to explain. Besides, everyone knows that my father's company is growing rapidly. A little research would have shown you that. You're the one who jumped to conclusions. Well, I guess so, but... And I mentioned the next big project, right? That's because I'm going to be the president of my father's company. The president? You? My ex was so shocked that he suddenly raised his voice. I moved the phone away from my ear and frowned. So noisy. Yes, that's right. But becoming president means I'll have to live overseas. For a while. Right now, most of our business is overseas, and continuing only in the US. Would be inconvenient. But I couldn't decide easily because of you and Gina. I was putting off the discussion until she is independent, then I planned to talk to you too about it. My ex was silent, seemingly at a loss for words. Hello? Are you listening? By the way, since you and Gina abandoned me, I gladly accepted the offer to become president. The schedule for moving overseas has been set, and soon I will be the president of a company with $30 million in annual revenue. That's ridiculous! I can't believe it! You only got $100,000 at the time of the asset division. Sure, that's a lot of money, but I would never imagine it amounts to $30 million. Ordinary people don't have that kind of wealth. That's true in some countries. Only a handful of companies exceed $30 million in annual revenue. But when you're talking on a global scale, it's a different story. Our company has always been international. Because we could expand overseas, we were able to grow this big. All my savings were managed under my father's name. You and Gina were spending too much, so I never had much saved up. I thought I'd better leave most of my salary with my dad. He can be trusted to succeed in new ventures and investments. But I saw a payslip of yours for an hourly wage of $7. What was that about? Oh, you were talking about that. I was wondering what you meant. Then I remembered. Probably what you saw was the payslip for someone who works part-time as a cleaner for us. That was from years ago. The company has been considering whether the wages for part-time workers are too low. So, I was reviewing it. The payslip you saw was probably from years ago. Nowadays, the minimum wage everywhere is over $10, so $7 would be unimaginable, wouldn't it? You could have figured that out with a little thought. I couldn't help but burst into laughter. It was all so ridiculous. After all, a proper glance at the details would have shown that the name and date were all wrong. My ex-husband must have been desperate to find my weakness. Maybe that's why he stumbled upon that paycheck by chance. But seriously, even a fool should have noticed. So, I've been mistaken all this time? I let a woman with an annual turnover of $30 million slip away. Well, that's about the size of it. I'm hanging up now. And please, send my regards to Gina. With that, I sharply ended the call from my ex-husband. He kept sending messages and calling non-stop, pleading for me to reconsider, but I ignored them all. His persistence was overwhelming, so I blocked him yesterday. 3 months have passed since then. I now live in Europe. Work has been extremely busy. I haven't had a single day off, but I'm grateful for the increase in work. Thanks to the absence of personal troubles, I'm now able to face my work without any stress, no matter how busy I get. Gina, my daughter, has called me a few times since then. Mom, I'm really sorry. Since becoming a middle schooler, Dad started bad-mouthing you, saying you were cheating, calling me stupid, and I just believed all of it, deciding you were the bad one. I've been saying terrible things all this time. I'm so sorry. Gina seemed genuinely remorseful, which made me consider forgiving her, but the way she had treated me, just because her father said so, was unforgivable. I'd like to say it's okay because your dad told you so, but you're also at fault here. You're not forgiving me, even though I'm apologizing so much? Aren't you my mother? Aren't you rich? Please. I was used to living with you. I can't lower my standard of living now. Do something. I'll go anywhere, even to Europe. while my daughter argues that she lived comfortably with me, having plenty of money and without any hardships. She and her father are now struggling in a cheap, cramped rental after being kicked out of the apartment. However, her words "aren't you my mother?" reminded me of the painful accusations I'd heard in the past. This apology seemed temporary, showing she didn't think she was in the wrong. In that case, I could no longer be on Gina's side. If this had been a sincere apology, I would have forgiven her without hesitation. That's just what parents do, we end up wanting to pamper our children. But this was different. Gina had mocked me too much in the past, she couldn't suddenly be genuine with me. She was always a proud child. So, I decided to stop being her mother. You said, "Aren't you my mother?" But you also told me not to act like one. So I've stopped. Sorry, but you're an adult now. Live your life. Good luck. What? You're kidding? You're going to abandon your own daughter? I won't be able to go to college, and all my first paycheck will go to rent. You were the one who abandoned me first, weren't you? Besides, I gave your father $100,000. You shouldn't be living so tightly for a while. That money. Dad spent it on a new car, and I accidentally bought a designer handbag, so there's hardly any left. Gina said uncomfortably. It seemed my ex-husband and daughter had been living lavishly on my salary, unable to stop their extravagant spending abruptly. But that's none of my business. I don't care about that. I've made up my mind. Take care of yourself. That's all. Despite everything, I don't plan to block my daughter. After all, she has been part of my life for over a decade. If she truly finds herself in trouble and is willing to apologize sincerely, abandoning her pride, then maybe I'll reach out. But that seems like it's still a long way off. Life in Europe is busy and not easy, but I am happy now. Perhaps one day, I'll take my American employees on a soothing trip back home. With that thought, I spend my peaceful days alone.